Hello, my name is Dominic Page, and today we'll be talking about the sarcophagus of Junius Bassus. First, let's start off answering questions like, who is he? Junius Bassus was a member of the Converts, which is a person that switches from one religion to Christianity. He is also a member of a royal family. His father had held the position of Praetorian executive. Junius Bassus held the position of Praefectus Urbi for Rome. It had been a position held by members of the most elite families of Rome. In his position as prefect, Junius Bassus was responsible for the ruling of the city of Rome. But once he died at the age of 42 within the year of 359, a sarcophagus was created for him, as recorded in an inscription of the sarcophagus currently in Vatican Palace. Junius Bassus had become a convert to Christianity shortly before his death. The style and pictures of this sarcophagus, as you can see in this image right here on the screen, shows the remodeled status of Christianity. This can be most evident, though, in the image at the middle of the higher register. Before the time of Constantine, the figure of Christ was rarely painted, but here in the Junius Bassus sarcophagus, we see Christ noticeably painted, but not in a narrative illustration from the New Testament, but in a formula obtained from Roman imperial art. The Traditio Legis was a formula in Roman art to give visual testament to the emperor as the sole source of law. Already at this early period, artists had many formulas for representing St. Peter and St. Paul, but Peter was painted with a bowl cut and a short cut beard, whereas the figure of Paul was painted with a pointed beard and usually a high forehead in paintings. In other images, Peter has white hair and Paul has black hair. The early establishment of those formulas was without a doubt a product of the doctrine of apostolic authority with the early church. Bishops claimed that their authority might be traced back to the initial 12 apostles. Peter and Paul held the standing as the primary apostles. The bishops of Rome have understood themselves in a direct succession back to St. Peter, the founding father of the church in Rome and its initial bishop. The recognition of the plan of the Traditio Legis in Christian art within 4th century was thanks to the importance of establishing orthodox Christian doctrine. In contrast to the establishment formulas for representing St. Peter and St. Paul, early Christian art reveals two different conceptions of Christ. The young beardless, based on illustrations of Apollo, fought for dominance with the long hair and bearded Christ based on representations of Jupiter and Zeus. As you can see, the feet of Christ within the Junius Bassus relief rest on top of a bearded, muscular figure who holds a unrolled veil spread over his head. This can be another formula originating from Roman art. A comparable figure seems at the top of the Cirrus of the Augustus of Promoporta. The figure can be identified as the figure of Caelus or the heavens within the context of Augustan sculpture. The figure of Caelus signifies Roman authority and its rule over everything earthly that is below the heavens. Within the Junius Bassus relief, Caelus positions below Christ's feet signifies that Christ is that ruler of heaven. In the lower register directly beneath this shows Christ's arrival into the capital of Israel. This image also based on a formula from Roman imperial art. The Adventus was a formula created to indicate the joyful arrival of the emperor, with figures offering respect. By including an entry into Jerusalem, the designer of the Junius Bassus sarcophagus didn't simply use this to represent the New Testament story. However, with the Adventus pictures, this signifies Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, whereas the Traditio Legis on top shows Christ's heavenly authority. It is likely the entry into Jerusalem in the form of the Adventists was supposed to indicate Christ's earthly authority. The comparison of Christ in majesty and the entry into Jerusalem suggests that the planner of the sarcophagus had an intentional program in mind when actually making this. We can verify some intentionality within the inclusion of the Old and New Testament scenes. For example, the image of Adam and Eve shown covering their nakedness after the fall was supposed to refer to the belief of sinning that involved Christ's entry into the world to save humanity through his death and resurrection. Humanity consequently in need of salvation from this world. Salvation could be a message within the relief of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac, which is on the left hand of the upper register. God challenged Abraham's faith by commanding Abraham to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. At the moment when Abraham is getting ready to carry out the sacrifice, his hand is stopped by an angel. Isaac is thus saved. It's likely that the addition of this scene within the context of the rest of the sarcophagus had another meaning as well. The story of the father's sacrifice of his only son was understood to refer as God's sacrifice of his son, which is Christ, on the cross. Early Christian theologians making an attempt to integrate the Old and New Testament saw in the Old Testament stories prefigurations of precursors of New Testament stories. Throughout Christian art, the recognition of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac is explained by its typological reference to the crucifixion of Christ. While not showing directly the crucifixion of Christ, the addition of the judgment of Pilate in the two compartments on the right side of the upper register is an early look at Christianity of a scene drawn from Christ's Passion. The scene is based on the formula in Roman art of Justita. Here, the emperor is shown sitting on the Sella Curialis, dispensing justice to a barbarian figure. As you can see, he looks like a barbarian. On the sarcophagus, Pilate is shown sitting also on a Sella Curialis. The position of Pontius Pilate as the Roman prefect of governor of Judea undoubtedly carries special meaning for Eunice Bassus in his role as Praefectus Urbi in Rome. Eunice Bassus, as senior official, would also be entitled to sit down on these same chairs that you see them sitting on. Just as Christ was judged by Roman authority, St. Peter and St. Paul were killed under Roman rule. The remaining two scenes on the sarcophagus represent St. Peter and St. Paul being led to their deaths. Peter and Paul, as the original apostles of Christ, were once more given importance. Their deaths witnessed Christ's own death. The artist appears to create the point by the visual pairing, by putting these two scenes of St. Peter being led to his death and the figure of Christ before Pilate. In each scene, the principal figure is flanked by two others. The importance of Peter and Paul in Rome is created apparent that two of the key churches that Constantine constructed in Rome were the Church of St. Peter and also the Church of St. Paul outside the walls. The positioning of the Church of St. Peter has long believed to be the place of his burial. The Basilica was built in the ancient cemetery, though we cannot make certain that Junius Bassus' sarcophagus was originally supposed to be buried here. It kind of adds up because a Roman Christian like Junius Bassus himself would want to be buried in a close proximity to the burial of the founding father of the Church of Rome. And that's my analysis on the Junius Bassus sarcophagus.